Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Srishti Chipte, and you are listening to the episode 20 of the Purple Science podcast. Today's episode is very special because we have a very special guest over. There are many people who have inspired me to take up psychom, and one person that I've always looked up to because she's so graceful, so amazing with what she does, and an absolute inspiration to me and science communicators like me. Today, we have with us my mentor, colleague, and dear friend, Dr. Sarah Iqbal. Sarah has completed her PhD in biochemistry from Oxford University, and currently she's a consultant at Foundation for Advancing Science and Technology, FAST India. She also plays a very instrumental role in the organization of the India Science Festival, which is just 3 days away. Ahead of the festival, we have talked about a lot of things about her journey of getting into science, how she made her way to SciComm, her experiences at Oxford, India Alliance, FAST India, the India Science Festival, the SciComm scenario in India, and a lot more. This is one of the most candid, raw, and my favorite episodes that I have had on the podcast so far. I hope that you enjoy listening to it as much as I did recording it. So stay tuned till the end and happy listening. All right, Sarah. So, just to begin with, can you take us back to your undergrad days and your cool story of getting into science?
I don't think I have a cool story, first of all, of
I'm
getting
sure
into
you
science.
do.
I have a very traditional, conventional story of kids, who were born in the 80s and why they took to science. But yeah, I mean, I think undergrad for me was a very exciting time. I think it definitely shaped me in a very profound way. I think my undergrad life shaped me a lot more than anything else after that came after. And I think I took to science as, again, like, as a default. I must probably take you back to my background. I grew up in an academic atmosphere. My father was in IIT Kanpur, and so academics, research, studying, education. These were very familiar things. They were part of my life, and there was no discussion around whether they were important or not. But at the same time, my mother comes from a family of artists and those who are done a lot of work in literature and arts. So I think I kind of grew up in a very kind of wholesome had a very wholesome upbringing in that sense, that where I was always looking at life not just through a lens of science or art, but really like a combination of the two. And I think I also never, at that time, I never also differentiated between the two, or at least I didn't have the ability to differentiate between the two. But when it came to more conventional things like career and what you want to do next in life and how you're going to sustain yourself in the real world, I think science was like that default option, because at that point, and I'm talking about more than 20 years ago now, the only way to kind of build a career was by taking up a science subject. It wasn't through arts, or even at that point wasn't even commerce. And I think in some sense, as a culture, as a society, we do look down upon those fields, right? Things have changed drastically now, and it's completely changed. I think we probably are looking down upon science. Kids who are taking up science than those who are getting
Okay,
into arts.
that's exaggeration.
Yeah, maybe it's not entirely true, but I think at least at our time it was the go-to
True, true.
option.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I think but I did have a very interesting chance encounter with someone who had studied when I was in class 10th. I had a very nice, pleasant encounter with somebody who had studied at St. Stephen's College in Delhi University, and I mean, she really kind of left a mark on me. And I asked somebody else. I was like, where is she? Like, where was she before she joined IIT Kanpur? And they were like, oh, she was studied at this place called St. Stephen's College. It's a really prestigious college in Delhi and all of that. And I honestly didn't know much about St. Stephen's when I decided at that point that I want to go to the same college, and yeah, and I told my parents about that. I have no interest in giving these entrance exams, and my parents were like, St. Stephen's has a very high cutoff. If you think you're going to get those sort of marks in your class 12, well, I mean, by all means, go ahead. We will support you. And yeah, so I think that's really how so it was, I didn't have any plans. I didn't have any backup options. I just had my eyes set on St. Stephen's. And fortunately, I mean, I think that purely my good fortune that I got through the college. And I did have a moment of uncertainty because I really liked biology, and St. Stephen's at that point wasn't offering biology. It only had chemistry, physics, maths, in addition to obviously humanities and social science subjects. So I was in a bit of a dilemma. And I think at that point, my father, probably for the first and the last time, gave me a very sound advice that, you build on your basics and your fundamentals in science, and then you can pick up any discipline, any subject later on. And at that time, sciences were becoming a lot more interdisciplinary, and you had a lot of new fields of biotechnology, nanotechnology coming up, but my father felt that if I get a degree in chemistry, I think that will prepare me to pick up these other or participate in these other emerging areas. So with that, I think in mind, I just applied, and in fact at the interview they asked me that I've scored quite high in physics and maths, and not so high in chemistry, but I still want to go ahead with that. Why is that? And I just told them that I prefer chemistry more than the other two subjects. And so I think I don't think it was ever I don't think I thought too deeply about which subject, what area of science should I really be going for. It was purely driven by my interests, very basal interests in these subjects. My undergraduation, I participated in a whole range of activities. There was a very clear divide between the arts block, as we called it, and the science block, and all of us in the science block were considered nerds, and we kind of just stick to our classes and our labs. But some of us kind of moved to the other side, into the arts block, were seen there a lot more, and we participated in a whole range of activities, from social service to entrepreneurship to music, to I think that time we also had a eco club. So there was a lot of different activities that I took part in, and I think that really shaped me and helped me gain a lot of skills that came into use. I think came in handy when I joined Oxford after Stevens. And it was also the first time you're away from home, away from family, so you're really kind of getting you're learning how to be on your own and how to kind of fend for yourself and deal with things that are not under your control because your family is not there to help you out. So I think that was a real, I think, moment or period of growth for me. And from then on, I think it kind of got obviously more complicated and a lot more challenging. But I think my undergraduate experience really trained me for what was to come later. And yeah, I think at college as well, I did a lot of I was in a lot of extracurricular activities, and I think I did fairly okay in academics, I'm guessing. So I think that's and Stevens was a bubble in Delhi University. For those who obviously are aware of St. Stevens, it's given a very elite tag, but most of us came from small cities. A lot of my friends came from small cities, and in India, and I think that tag is necessarily true. I think it at least during my time, it accepted people from all walks of life and all from different background states, and it was a very very vibrant, diverse ecosystem that I don't think I don't know what colleges today are like, but I feel like that was quite unique and unusual for that time. And yeah, that's it. I think that's it. I'll stop rambling now.
So I actually have a lot of follow-up questions on this. I'll
Yeah,
ask them
sure.
one by one.
Yeah.
First is a little different tangent, but I'd
Mhm.
really like to know. So with every passing day, I'm realizing that women in science, women in STEM fields are still a taboo, and it's still an issue. It's considered an issue. So
Yeah.
Being from an academic background,
Mhm.
because you had family members who were in the same field,
Mhm.
how were you treated in the real world being a woman?
For the longest time, and I don't know if it's because of my partly because of my upbringing. I think my parents never differentiated between me and my brother. We were, my brother is only about a year older to me, so they were very fair to both of us. They gave us the same opportunities. They never made us feel like, you're a guy, you're a boy and you're a girl. And so I kind of grew up not having that gender divide at all. And I also grew up on a campus where I think this sort of gender divide, at least to me, wasn't apparent when I was growing up. I could also be just, in my Lala world, Lala land that time. But and so when I obviously and when I went to college again, I felt there was a gender divide. A lot of the student presidents at that point were men, except for the last year when I think when I was on my way out of college, we got the first female president in college. There were a couple of things. I think now when I look back, I do see that there was some very clear sort of gendered issues and in college too, which because I think because it's a the college is a microcosm. It's the representation of the larger society. So a lot of us had also normalized those things, so we didn't really see them the way they should have been seen as gender discrimination. But I felt till I came back to India in 2014, I don't think I really felt I was discriminated against. My PhD was with a female professor in Oxford. All my collaborators were women. In fact, my PhD reviewers were also women. So I kind of, even my PhD experience was very female dominated. But I did see my supervisor struggle to kind of claim her space in the department. I did see her struggle a lot of times in getting resources and other things that perhaps the other male PIs didn't have as much of a challenge. And so I did used to see her struggle a little bit every now and then. But I don't think that I really felt that discrimination or I was ever put through that till I came back to India. And I think then they were very some of them were very explicit. For example, I have a funny story. I mean, it's funny now. It wasn't funny when it happened. I had gone to organize a workshop somewhere, in the southern part of the country, and I was with two of my colleagues. And when we were introducing ourselves to our hosts, the host kind of shook hands of my male colleagues, but they kind of didn't really look at me and kind of just ignored that I was there and I was present. And then as soon as they found out that I'm from Oxford University, I was there. Suddenly, my gender disappeared. I felt like I had no gender. I was not male. I was not female. Maybe I was male. I don't know. But I felt suddenly they forgot that I had a XX chromosome, and they treated me like even better than my male colleagues. And I realized at that point, the kind of power that such institutions or such exposure or experience can bring to you, or can really kind of help you stand on your feet in this very imperfect and flawed world. And even though I used to hate kind of sharing that I'm from Oxford and using that as like my introduction, but in those spaces, even today in those spaces, I do use that. Otherwise, I think a lot of people will see you just as a woman, and not what you bring to the table, or what sort of expertise and knowledge you bring to the table. So I think there have, since I've come back to India, of course, there have been many instances of subtle and not so subtle gender discriminations. And I think I'm a lot more aware of these today than I was earlier. And it could be maybe in academic world, we are sort of shielded from these very societal conversations on gender. We just focus on research, and that we need to publish papers and research, and so we kind of ignore the larger societal problems that exist in the world. So I think I'm a lot more aware. I've been a lot more sensitized to that, and I do in my own little way try to address this problem through the work that I do, and the way I just function today. So yeah.
I think you put it really well that we have been normalizing some of these things so much that we didn't make it out as discrimination. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's
yeah,
subtle, sometimes it's definitely not so subtle. So, but since we were
yeah,
talking about even elite institutes, St.
yeah.
Stephen's, and then you went to Oxford, I'll make this question a little more Oxford specific. You've
Sure.
spent some time there. Do you feel possessing this background makes a difference in your thought process and the opportunities that you get? And what are some things, even including the kind of environment that you got in terms of the opportunities, the gendered opportunities and everything? What are
Mhm.
some things in Oxford that cannot be replicated elsewhere, especially here in India?
Those are really good questions. Let me try to respond. I
Yeah.
mean, I think the Oxford experience was you're in an extremely highly intellectual atmosphere, right? I mean, it's you have the best minds in the world, some of the best minds in the world there, and you are walking into these talks and seminars where some of the best folks from around the world are present. So I think it is inevitable that you will get influenced and informed by that. And your worldviews obviously they broaden, they become a lot more wholesome, and they become a lot more diverse. And because Oxford is a is a very very old institution, so there are some things I feel which are inherent to institutions. I don't think you can replicate them. Surely, just because they have such a long history that's deeply embedded in its DNA. And so I don't think that a lot of things can be replicated. I feel like the college I came from in India, sorry, the college I went to in India uh, was following the Oxbridge model to some extent. So I think a lot of the traditions and things that were done in my college were similar to Oxford. So I think we have replicated some of that. A lot of it was obviously because of colonialism. So I think some of those very superficial things, I think we've managed to embed and kind of borrow and adapt to our in our setting, in our context. But there are some things that are intangible, that are very difficult to kind of borrow and use. So like in my college, we had the tradition of tutorials, at least in the arts and humanities, not in the sciences, but we had tutorials where one professor would kind of have three or four students who would who would meet them, and there would be these very 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 intimate kind of teaching and learning, which is opposed to one teacher giving a lecture to say 50, 60, 100 students. So this form of teaching and learning really was borrowed from, again, the Oxbridge system. And um, and so those sort of teaching methods perhaps can be the best practices in teaching and learning, can perhaps be translated to other contexts and contexts like ours. And I think there was a lot of freedom of ideas and thoughts and expression in the university, at least again from what I remember. There were also you also got a chance to dissent. You also had the chance to provoke, argue. So I think Oxford did provide that safe space, at least during my time. And but again, I mean, now that I look back, when I look more closely to the various societies and unions and other forms, other structures that existed in Oxford University, there was an underlying racism. There was very like blatant racism. There was a lot of tokenistic call to diversity. And I think even today, UK, many institutions in the UK, not just UK, I think across the world, especially the global north, uh, there is a whole lot of racism. There is a whole lot of tokenism being shown for inclusion and diversity, and that needs to be called out. That needs to be recognized first of all, and then has to be called out. Otherwise, we will normalize that as well. And so we can't borrow those sort of ideas. Like, those things are still not perfect in that part of the world. of how we make these systems inherently inclusive and inherently diverse. I think those are things we still can't borrow from these places. But just providing that room to think and to argue, to provoke, to challenge the status quo. I think that freedom you do get. But again, I think Oxford was, I would say, is a bubble. It's like an absolute academic bubble. I think it's also disconnected from the real world. So a lot of discussions, a lot of intellectual discussions that happen there were also quite disconnected from the realities of the new world. And so again, I don't think it was a perfect place. Or it was, just something, a model that can be emulated or should be emulated. It had its flaws, but it also had some very progressive teaching and learning and space for debates and discussions that I think can be borrowed. And then they're constantly pushing the frontiers of knowledge, and they're constant like pushing what is possible, what can humans do, like what are we really capable of. I think that that constant thirst for knowledge and pushing the boundaries of knowledge, that can definitely be borrowed, I think, from the global north. And I think it's because these are very resource rich nations, they're very resource rich economies, so it's easy for them to do these things, to do this sort of knowledge, to chase knowledge and to constantly push these frontiers of knowledge. I think it's possible for them, might not be entirely possible for countries like India, which are still not as resource rich. So yeah, I don't know if that really answered your question, but that's just some of the thoughts that came to me as you asked me to reflect on Oxford.
I think I really liked how balanced this answer was. So you
I'm glad.
highlighted everything from what to borrow and what not to borrow, and that is exactly the idea, not to blindly copy what the West is doing, but
Yeah,
have our own identity and take the best of everything. That's the
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I have a lot of questions about your science communication journey, but before that, if you can also tell us in detail about your research interests and your PhD a little bit, which I believe was in biochemistry.
Right. So I would say that I kind of stumbled into my research area during my PhD, because my undergrad was in chemistry. But like I mentioned earlier, I was really interested in biology. So when I started looking at labs in Oxford and Cambridge and other universities, I was really looking at labs that are pursuing biological questions in biology, and but maybe through a lens of chemistry. And so I didn't really, at that point, I didn't really have a very clear understanding of a research area I wanted. So the typical research area that would come to you is like cancer, or genes and genetics, or and so for me, I think I wanted, I was very interested in molecular biology, I was very interested in genetics. So I kind of looked at labs that were kind of working in those areas. So my PhD research primarily focused on understanding the molecular basis of rare connective tissue disorders called Marfan syndrome and stiff skin syndrome, where I was actually looking at how Marfan syndrome is when your connective tissue becomes very weak and very unstable, whereas in stiff skin disorder, which as the name suggests, your connective tissue becomes very stiff. So and the same protein where a mutation can give rise to a loose or a weak connective tissue, and the same kind of protein and same base in that protein gets changed and to a different amino acid, and it you get stiff skin. So I was really trying to understand what's going on outside the cell, because these are proteins that are present outside the cell that give them the integrity and the strength to kind of keep themselves together. So I was trying to understand why that's happening. And I honestly, it was a complete gamble. I didn't know my supervisor, Penny Hanford, at all before I joined her lab. I just thought that, she took a lot of interest in me and my background. And yeah, she wanted me in her lab. So I was like, why not? And she also really helped me in getting a scholarship. And she was very supportive overall. And my PhD experience was absolutely, I would say, spectacular. I think it was, I have really no complaints. She was a fantastic mentor. Not only did she focus on, the rigors of scientific research, she was very, very particular about the data we would present to her. She would dissect it. She would not let us like make, any exaggerated claims or see things that are not there. And she was very particular about that. And at the same time, she was very particular about the way we would communicate our work. And so I think I got, maybe subconsciously, that entered my mind, that it's important how you communicate your work and how effectively you're able to do that. And so I think my PhD experience was not just about publishing papers, but it was a lot about how do you do high quality, rigorous scientific research, and how do you communicate your research effectively. So you could say that my some of the seeds for the work that I'm doing today was sown then. And then I also was the co-founding editor of a science magazine that we started in the department, which has now become a university-wide magazine. And I think that was also propelled by the need that we're just not talking enough between ourselves, like between labs in the same department, we didn't know what was going on. And so we felt that we needed like a platform or a channel that could inform what's really happening in the department and who's doing what. The history of the department. Many of us didn't know, the history. The biochemistry department at university is very old, and we didn't know what the history was. There were archives that we didn't know existed. So I think the need to communicate, the need to make knowledge and information accessible. I think that the seeds were sown during my PhD, and also I think the rigors of science and the rigors of research. And I think I would give a lot of credit to my PhD experience, where it really helped me recognize that it's not just about getting results and data, but really what goes through, how do you design your experiments, how do you analyze and interpret your data, how do you really kind of connect the dots and make sense of that, how do you write your manuscripts so that they don't have a lot of jargon and there is a narrative, there is some storyline. I think I got a lot of that training in my PhD lab.
Awesome. So I have two questions for you. One is, of
Mhm.
course, we would like to know how and why you pivoted your career towards science
Mhm.
communication. And now, because we know that your interest towards communication was rooted in your PhD journey, do you think
Mhm.
that a PhD does in fact help in being a better science communicator that you are today? And in general, do you think that a PhD is sort of that, at least that experience, not for the degree, but that experience, that rigorous research experience is important in your science communication journey as well? So both how you pivoted your career and then
Mhm.
how do you feel your PhD was significant in your SciComm journey?
Right. I think my PhD experience kind of made me realize that there is that you build a lot of different skill sets during your PhD, and that you need to recognize that. So I don't think that at that point I was very clear about science communication. In fact, that was a term I'd not even heard during my PhD. Um, so I think the seeds that were sown were that it's important to communicate science. I think that was it. That and that time at that point I would say it was to communicate science effectively to your peers. It was not even to the public. I think at that point, at least in Oxford, I felt there were very few opportunities for public engagement. It's surprising to me. That's changed. I hear, I have met people who kind of lead public engagement in Oxford now. And of course, that's changed quite a lot. But at my time, I don't think I really got opportunity to participate in public engagement activities. So a lot of the communication I did was to, scientific peers and within the community. But it was really when I went to do my postdoctoral research at Scripps Research Institute in Florida is where I think I started realizing the importance of communicating science beyond your scientific domain and your community. And that was because the institute was based in a very wealthy part of Florida, and also, we were the only academic institution there. Of course, there was a university, and then we were the other um, institute. So a lot of times we had to also kind of justify our existence in that community. Why do we exist? Why we're taking up all this real estate? From this otherwise tourist loving, holiday loving Floridians. And so we did a lot of community events there, and that's when I realized that, oh, this is important. I mean, I'm enjoying communicating science to non-scientists, and they're interested in what I'm doing, which really kind of boosted my confidence and my interest in communication. Also, another thing that kind of changed my view around communication to non-experts was my fellowship. My postdoctoral fellowship was funded by somebody who lost her husband to Parkinson's, and I was working on Parkinson's in during my postdoc. So my research was so real. Like, it suddenly kind of came alive. There were people who were who had been at the wrong end of this of this disease. And so that really made my research, I made me see my research very, very differently. And why am I doing this research, and the questions I would get from them really made me think about my research a lot more deeply. And I realized in this whole process of, when you interact with people who don't know anything about your research, it really helps you think about your research differently, and a lot more um, holistically, or comprehensively. And instead of just you focusing on just a small little aspect of it, so it helps you zoom out, basically. So so I think a lot of my experiences during my postdoctoral research made me realize that this is a space, the science and society interface is a space I do want to explore a bit more. I don't know if I'll be able to do a good job of it. It seemed like an area where some intervention was needed, like some problem solving needed to be done. And I also wanted to understand this space better. So I think I would say it was a very slow burn. It was my journey was a slow burn. I don't think I had this like moment where I said, okay, now I'm gonna take up science communication. And unlike all of you today, all you science communicators today, who I think are a lot more clear about why you want to get into science communication. I don't think I had that sort of clarity when I took my first job back in India after my postdoctoral stint. I just thought that this was an interesting area. It was an area nobody was really thinking about, paying attention to. And here's this organization that wants to do something. They're hiring someone for the first time to look into public engagement with science. So I was like, okay, I don't mind. I don't mind also learning along with them what this space really looks like, and what is that we can do with this space in India. So I think it was not so much the Oxford experience that I would say propelled my interest, but it was really my postdoctoral work. But I think the seeds were sown then. I think the seeds to communicate or engage, I think, were sown at that, was sown during my PhD. But it was really like, I think they crystallized, my plans and my ideas crystallized during my postdoc. So, yeah.
This is awesome, actually. So it is very easy to lose sight during a PhD because we are, as you said, looking in a very zoomed in version of the
Yeah.
science. But you
Yeah.
could see the bigger picture, which I think makes you a good public engager.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it helps you look at your work very differently. It also helps you not lose interest in your work.
True.
I think if you zoom out. And I think that's why I have seen a lot of PhD students losing interest, obviously, other than, other issues of, your supervisor not being great or supportive. I think you also lose interest in research because you are always zooming in, and at some point you
Yeah,
feel like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Or, is it
exactly.
making any difference? And, all those sort of questions start coming to you. So I think it's important to zoom out. And I think science communication, public engagement really helps you zoom out during your PhD training and look at your work differently. And let others comment on your work, let others engage with your work. And that also kind of excites you, right? Like somebody's taking interest in your work. So that's exciting. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I really wonder. So people do say
Yeah.
that we are not getting any Nobel prizes or anything, but I think that's
Mm,
very different politics. I feel
mm,
there is
mm,
some
mm,
amazing science happening in the country, but when it comes to science communication, we might not
mhm,
have. And I know that this is not the best way to say this, but we do not have a Neil
mm.
deGrasse Tyson or a Carl Sagan and people
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this.
Mm,
I wouldn't say that science communication is a new field. People have been
mhm,
doing this for years, and
mhm,
your generation has been paving the way for the newbies that are coming in. But
mhm.
why do you think we do not have some of these examples in the country? What is that we are doing wrong, and or if there are people that, but we are just not aware of them? Is that the case?
Yeah. No, I mean, this is actually a question that is keeping a lot of us up at night. I mean, in an exaggerated sense. I think it's this question is central to the work that all of us are doing, right? That why do we not have more scientific role models or more people who are in the public eye, like more scientists, sorry, more scientists who are in the public eye. Why do we not, like the way we have, famous sports people and business people? Why do we not have scientists who are also famous and who people listen to? And I think it's largely because of, first of all, I don't think we should compare ourselves with the US. I think our histories are so
Absolutely.
different.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
And I think it would be hard to replicate things that happen in the US. And we're trying to do that, right? I mean, Science Festival, I feel, is one of those things that is happening in other parts of the world, and we're trying to replicate that format in India. And so I think that we did have role models. I think we did have scientists in who were part of the public discourse, who were icons in the 70s and 80s and even earlier for that matter. I think we somewhere lost that after, say, maybe 90s or 2000s. I think we lost these icons, scientific icons, and I think that's what I think all of us are trying to do now, is revive that uh, scientific culture in the country. I think we somewhere lost the steam, and there were many reasons, I guess, for that. I think India became, because after 1991 became economically liberalized. I think technologies came in. We kind of, I think the whole ethos of the country, the culture changed suddenly, when we were economically liberalized. And I think maybe science maybe got lost in that change somewhere. And I think also, I think by that time, a lot of brain drain had happened in India. Before 91, a lot of people had left India. A lot of scientists you would have seen in the 90s or the 2000s had, were basically not there. They had already migrated to other parts of the world. So I think we kind of lost that critical mass, or really high quality, perhaps scientists, or not high quality. I think that would be very unfair to say. I think maybe people who thought that communicating science was important. I think maybe we got too busy fixing the scientific ecosystem. We were probably building institutions and policies and all of that, perhaps. Or so I really don't know. I don't have the answer. Maybe I should look into that. I think I should figure out what happened really between the 90s and the 2000s, and why did we not have any, icons, scientific icons, public icons there. But I think that is the sort of change we want today. Is we want to bring science back into public imagination. We want to see more celebrity scientists, as many people today call them, science rock stars like Neil deGrasse and others are called. So I think that's something that we will probably see in the times to come. I think COVID definitely brought a spotlight on science and scientists. We did see a lot of scientists come in, into the public spotlight. Many of them were giving media interviews day in and day out, like Professor Gagandeep Kang, Dr. Shahid Jamil, Dr. Gautam Menon. A lot of them were in the public limelight. A lot of my family members got to know them, who have nothing to do with science, or friends got to know these names, which were completely hidden and invisible before pandemic happened. So I think maybe science was waiting for such a moment to happen, that scientists can become public people. And I think somewhere there were people science movements, as you probably know, in the right after independence, and there was this science movement in the country. But I think that it kind of lost steam again in the in the 90s or the 2000s. I think we lost those people science movements for many reasons, and I think that movement is again building up, and so I'm quite optimistic. I'm quite positive that we will see a lot more science and scientists and scientific people in the public domain in the times to come. But I don't think we need to do it the way the West has done it or how America or the US has done it. Maybe we'll do it in our own way. I don't know what that way would be, but I'm sure we'll find a way to do that.
So the thing is, yes, you are very right in saying that there's something that happened towards the 2000s that changed the scenario a little bit. In fact, a lot.
Mm.
Well,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
when I started in science or science communication, I felt that there are no stories, there are no people in science who can
Mhm.
are worthy of being role models. That's why we do not see them. But that I couldn't have been more wrong. That's not the case.
Mm.
There is
Yeah.
some amazing stuff happening.
Yeah, I think maybe scientists, when I came back to India and I joined this, when I got into public engagement and science communication, the sense I was getting from the community, the scientific community, was that scientists don't need to communicate their work. It's more important that they do research. That was a sentiment I saw across, and I think to a large extent, it's still there. Why do scientists need to communicate science? And where did that sentiment come in? At what point did that come in? How did that evolution happen? When there were so many scientists who were in the public domain in the 80s and even before that, from Jayant Narlikar to your
Right.
MS Swaminathan, to everybody. There were a lot of folks from that time who really spoke openly, publicly about various things. And so why did this sentiment come in? Where did it come in? Why did it come in? I think is worthy of investigation. um, but I think that's largely the reason why today we don't have scientists in the public domain, because it's been ingrained in them that they don't need to communicate science. They should focus on their research. And so till the time we don't break this idea that or this a mandate from wherever it has come, that scientists should not be communicating science, then I think till the time we don't break that, we will not see more scientists coming into the public space. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to also consider that most
Yeah.
of the people in our country have nothing to do with science on a daily basis. It's
Mhm.
not about USA or India or their scientists and us. It's nothing like that.
Mhm.
They just don't think they are involved in any way, and that's
Yeah,
not a problem until they actively engage themselves in science conversations without realizing
absolutely.
it, and then that becomes
Yeah.
a problematic.
Yeah, true. No, that's true. And I've lately also been saying that, scientists don't need to become activists, but they need to become active citizens.
Hmm.
You don't need to, you don't need to comment or involve yourself in political issues, but you need to be, you need to recognize they are there. There are social issues. There are various issues that scientists should also be contributing to, not just through their research but through just being a citizen of a country. And I think somewhere scientists also stopped being those active citizens in the country,
Yeah.
and they were like, we'll just sit in this little island of research, and we'll focus there, and we don't care what happens outside the walls of this research oasis. And I think that is also a very problematic thought. And I think that's again the reason why I think so. That's why I feel like not only do scientists need to communicate, I think they need to become active citizens. I think that's also need of the hour. We need to participate in the politics of the country, and if we don't do that, I don't think things will change in science. A lot of scientists complain about, oh, this is, we have this challenge and that challenge, and I mean, those challenges exist because those challenges also exist in the society, in other domains of, in other fields, in other domains. So why will they not exist in science? Um, so I think we need to recognize that science and scientific community is part of this larger, political system, this larger social system, and we need to contribute to that. And I guess science communication and engagement is another way of doing it, another way of being that, taking that active part in the matters that related to society.
Yeah, I don't want us to digress, but I really want to ask you this question
Mhm.
because we have been discussing this, and because we know this is an issue that science communication is at least at the moment it is considered as a softer option for
Yeah.
research. And well, it sometimes is also these opinions are also gendered, sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how do we bridge the gap between scientists and science communicators? Because I believe that even though they might play different roles, they can be the same people, right? They are part of the
Mm.
same community, the same circle. How do we
Yeah.
bridge
Yeah.
that gap between them? They're both scientists, they're both science communicators.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
See, I feel there is a lot of power dynamics in play here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think researchers are inherently more powerful in this system that we are discussing than science communicators are. And I think, but just because there is this power differential, science science communicators will never be able to claim space in this scientific ecosystem. So I think first of all, this power differential needs to be addressed. Why does it exist? How can we address it? How do we remove it? And that science communicators should not be subservient to scientists or to the scientific ecosystem. They're equal contributors. They're also knowledge producers.
Exactly.
They're also contributing to the advancement of science through many ways, through many different ways. They're not advancing it through by being in the lab and doing research, but they are building trust and support for science. They're building understanding for science so that science gets the support that it needs. And it is also helping bring in constant flow of people, of young people into science, which is what science needs to thrive. So I think there are a lot of different reasons, and maybe what we have not done well as a community of science communicators is that we've not really articulated these objectives and the purpose for science communication very clearly, and we've not build this case very, very well and very effectively. And I think that's what we're trying to do also in the SciComm Think Labs that we recently launched, is really kind of build a roadmap for science communication. Why does it exist? How do we go about doing science communication? Why should people pay attention to this? And so I think we need a lot more deeper thought, deeper sort of exploration and thought given to science communication, and not treat it as something you do on the side. I think science communication has suffered a lot because it was also always considered as something that people would do on the side because they're really interested and passionate. But passion will not sustain a field. You need prop policies, you need resources, you need infrastructure, you need experts and knowledgeable people to really push this field and build this field. So I think till the time we'll keep seeing it as something that people can do on the side, which is fine. I'm not saying that you should not do it on the side. Of course, scientists will always do science communication in addition to their core, research, but it should not be treated as something you do without giving much thought to. It needs a lot more thought, and I think for that reason itself, it needs to be given that sort of space in the ecosystem. So I think the relationship can be improved if we fix the system. I think the system is very flawed. I think if the system builds these power differentials, and it happens at many levels. It's not just science communicators and scientists. It's scientists and administrators and scientists and many other actors in this whole ecosystem. So we need to look at the entire system and the flaws of the entire system, and address it in that way. But I think in the shorter term, obviously this is a slightly longer term culture change that needs to happen, or but I think in the more near term, it needs to be that science communicators need to be a bit louder about their purpose and make a more effective case for themselves, I think. And that's the only way I would say that, and really kind of do it in an evidence-based manner, like show data, see why science communication is working, how it's working. Even if it's qualitative data, it doesn't matter, but we need to show some sort of evidence to say that science communication is important. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that it is a process, and these are just different steps in the process, whether it is core research or then science communication and the policy making. It's all. I really don't understand how the power dynamics came into picture, because all of it is very,
Yeah.
very necessary for the process to be completed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, coming back to your specific journey in science communication, because I feel it is very special in terms of having this example in the community that
Mm-hmm.
we are all inspired from somebody who is also into core research, and then
Mm-hmm.
she makes a case for public engagement that becomes a whole new a different picture altogether. So I think that is very inspiring for the science communicators who are now coming in. So focusing on your journey, you've
Mm-hmm.
worked with DBT for a long time. I think that was your first gig after you came back to India,
Yeah.
if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So if you can tell us about the organization a little bit and maybe your takeaways from the 6 year experience.
Sure. So when I was finishing up, or not finishing up my postdoc, when I was looking for what I should be doing after my postdoc, I was looking back at India. I wanted to move back, and I had my eyes on this organization, which is DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance. It's a partnership between the Government of India and Wellcome Trust, which is a funding agency based in the UK, but they fund research in health across the world, particularly in middle income countries. So I was quite intrigued by this collaboration. I thought, and I because I was in the UK, I of course knew about Wellcome and the sort of presence it had and the impact it had. So I was very curious about how this partnership is going to be, what kind of programs they'll be working on. So I had my eyes on them, and one of my colleagues from Oxford had also moved back to India and had joined that organization. So I knew this is an interesting space that's coming up in the country, where it's a non-academic space that I could perhaps move into, because I was very clear when I was finishing up my postdoc that I didn't want to continue academic research once I get back to India. So I think I applied. I really just looked at the job description. I had no idea what public engagement with science at that point meant, really. At least the understanding I have today, I just didn't have that at that point. And I just looked at the job description. I felt like I could do most of it. So why not apply? And because I had done a lot of community events and public engagement work during my postdoc, it really came in handy when I applied. So I was not somebody who had absolutely no understanding of the jobs that were outlined there, but I had some relevant experience. So that kind of, I think, helped me in getting this job. And once I was there, I really had a clean slate. There was no precedence, because I was the first public engagement officer they had hired. And the public engagement as a term was something that is very common in the UK, and Wellcome, has a very large public engagement program. So they wanted, the programs that they were funding outside of Wellcome in, other parts of the world. They wanted all those research programs to have a component of public engagement. So it was really like a mandate from that funder that they created this position of public engagement. And I'm extremely grateful to them for doing that. And so while, they told the organization to start a position of public engagement, I don't think even the organization had a sense of what I would be doing. So I really kind of built my profile, I would say pretty much from scratch as I went along over the years. And that was also the time when a new CEO had come, and he had a lot of ideas for what he wanted to do and how he wanted to address many of the gaps that existed in the biomedical research ecosystem. So I kind of also assisted him, helped him in developing some of those ideas and programs, and he was really always very open to me experimenting on public engagement ideas. So I've worked quite extensively with artists during my time in India Alliance. Did dabbled a lot with participatory arts, art and science, and all of that was possible because I think nobody really knew what this position or the person occupying this position should be doing. And so I would say that I think that getting that opportunity to experiment, I think it's very essential for for a public engagement or a science communicator practitioner. And so for about 6 years, I think initial years were really spent in understanding, what does the Indian landscape look like? What are the needs? Where are the gaps? What is the scientific community thinking? What does the public look like in India? What are some challenges in taking science to the public? So yeah, so I think the initial kind of years was spent really doing that. And what are some formats that one can use to make science more accessible, more engaging, more appealing to a non-scientific audience. And a lot of my work also revolved around sensitizing researchers to think about science communication and public engagement as part of their research. So we did a lot of workshops. We conducted a lot of science communication workshops across the country, and it also kind of helped me travel across the country and see the country because of that. So I think part of my work really focused on really exploring and understanding what sort of formats and styles of communication and engagement work. Part of my work revolved around sensitizing the community about public engagement and why it's important and why we should be doing it. And I think it becomes easier when a funder is talking about it because of the power that a funder has. So people listen to you and people pay attention to what you have to say. So I think that really helped our cause. I think that really helped me in making a message very loud and clear to the community that this is very extremely essential. And then we, in India Alliance, because it's primarily a funding agency, we used to fund research in biomedical sciences and health. We had a section on public engagement. What sort of public engagement plans do the researchers have? And over the years, I saw in that 6 years that I was there, from not filling that section at all to actually, contacting the grants advisors at the funding agency and asking them, okay, can I suggest this? Can I propose that? To actually submitting standalone applications for public engagement to us. So, I really saw that evolution from when I started to when I actually completed my time at India Alliance, that the community had also become a lot more sensitized and were attentive to science communication and public engagement. And I think it's because of there was a wave of science communication in the country. So I wouldn't say that was because we were doing something, we were trying to sensitize, and it's purely because of our efforts. But I think there were a lot of different places where the science communication wave was kind of building up. And so I think my experience at India Alliance was really of exploration, experimentation, learning, sense making, and I think that has really helped me in the work that I'm doing today, which is kind of spans a lot of different areas. But I'll probably stop here now.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about. When people did not have an idea of what this position can entail, you have painted a picture of what all is possible. So that is helping us all very much, and I really appreciate that. But also at this point, I'd like you to maybe sort of differentiate between these terms of public engagement, science outreach, science communication for our audiences, because we use these terms a lot of times, and I don't think I'm the best person to actually. So if there's a bifurcation at all, would you like to highlight it?
See, that's a very important question, but I think And you're right that we are using these terms interchangeably all the time, and I think we maybe need to be a lot more careful about using these terms and what they mean. But at the same time, I think that um, public engagement and science communication also means different things to different people. So I don't know if we should really box them. But for the sake of professionalizing a field, we do need these definitions. I think we do need to have boundary conditions. So for that reason, I would say that uh, I do think that public engagement takes communication of science to the next level. It really encompasses the idea of dialogue, of having a conversation, of being receptive to what the public has to say, to listening to public about what they have to say about science or their ideas around on science. And I think it's a slightly more empathetic model of science communication, where you also come down from your ivy tower, and you kind of listen, and you're equal. You're on the equal plane with the public. So that's how I look at public engagement, and I prefer to use engagement over communication, because I feel communication just talks about one way communication, and engagement really kind of talks about two-way communication and conversation, and it just sounds a lot more meaningful. So I prefer to use engagement over communication. But because we've been using science communication in the latest science and technology innovation policy STIP 2020, we have a chapter on science communication and public engagement. I prefer to use both the terms just to stay consistent with the sort of jargon we're using.
Awesome. So I don't know how to accommodate this question exactly, but I'd like to know about this unique uh, consultant position that you right now have, the kind of interaction exchange you have with Fast India. I want to ask about that. And then, of course, ahead of the 2024 edition of the India Science Festival, and this is where I met you, and I can speak a lot about it through the entire episode, but that's not the point. So, if you'd like to tell us about the festival and its inception, what role you played in it, maybe just about it.
Sure. So, Foundation for Advancing Science and Technology, FAST India, is a science policy think tank, and it's just about 2 years old or less, I would say. And I was really brought in to help them set up the science communication vertical. And as part of the science communication vertical, we also work on the India Science Festival, which you've also been part of, Srishti. So, but the India Science Festival, or ISF as we call it, predates Fast India. It was started as a CSR initiative of Varun Agrawal's company, who's also the founder of Fast India. And the objective of the festival was really to kind of get young people interested in science, give them access to scientists from not just India but across the world. And when I say young people, really wanted to inspire and nurture interest in STEM undergraduates in the country, because Varun felt that they didn't really have access to the latest in science and technology, and they were just their understanding of science was just confined to their curriculum and textbooks. So yeah, that's really, I think, how the science festival came about, and of course the larger goal of bringing science back into public imagination, into public discourse. That was also another very important objective of the festival. And so since the first time the festival was held back in 2020 in ISET Pune, to now, I think the festival has also evolved, and it's also responding to the needs in the country, and adapting to what people like, what people in India or the public in India would enjoy in a festival, or young people would really like to see in the festival. So it's really kind of evolving with every edition. I think there was a slight setback when due to the pandemic, because for 2 editions the festival took place online. So there's only so much that you could do in an online festival. But earlier this year, we is also when I joined. I joined the foundation about 2 years ago, and I was part of their first online festival, which is when I really understood what it takes to organize a festival online, which is obviously very challenging because making it interactive and engaging, and bringing on all the elements that a festival would have. It's really impossible, and people were also fatigued after a year or so of online meetings and Zooms and all. So it was quite challenging, but we were really excited when we realized that we could actually do the next festival on ground in Hyderabad. And I think so. Yeah, so I was primarily involved in designing the festival program, bringing in new elements to the program. Be it the elements of science and art and science and culture, bringing in new partners on board, who shared our mission, and of making science more accessible, or promoting science among young people. So I was really kind of brought in to look into the program design, and really kind of building this community and partnership and collaborations across sectors. And then I think that has been a very enriching and inspiring, I would say, journey, because I didn't realize just how many people would be interested in joining hands for a science festival, which is just a 2 day long festival, but they really believe we need a platform like this for science in the country. And even if it's a 2 day long festival, the after effects or the effects and the outcomes are long lasting, or they're enduring. They endure even after the festival is over. The partnerships and the collaborations and the exchange of ideas that happen during the festival really kind of travel beyond, and have a life beyond the festival, which is great, which I didn't realize could be one of the impact, could be one of the impact of a festival, which is really a 2 day event in a year. And so I think that's really been my experience. We're now, as you mentioned, we're working on putting together the next festival in ISER Pune from 20th to 21st of January.
Yeah, I think it's kind of difficult to really outline the impact of a festival setting.
Yeah.
It becomes difficult, but because I've been a part of this process and the way we designed it on paper, and then when we saw it happening in front of our eyes, you have to
Mhm.
experience it. That's
Yeah,
how you get to know the impact of it. So
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that for those who all are listening to this conversation, I wanted to ask you about its impact, but I think if they are listening to this, and they can
Mhm.
totally attend the January festival and
Yep,
they'll know what's
absolutely.
happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
Uh,
and I think
yeah,
I mean, I feel that you just wanted to add that, like, the festival, of course, was a beautiful celebration. There were so many things that happened. So many wonderful people came and spoke about science and made science so much more interesting and engaging. But I think it also managed to catalyze the ecosystem in Hyderabad. A lot of people, after the festival was over,
yeah.
but those who were part of the festival felt that, hey, why are we not doing an event like this in Hyderabad? Because there is clearly a huge appetite for something like this. And all of them were part of the festival, so they're pretty much, I would say, they're the reason why the festival was successful. So why not do this every year and make it like a continuing tradition? So I think that for me was a huge, very, very satisfying. And also that many of us, including you, me, all of us have made some very important partnerships, and we met some very important people along the way who we are working with now, who have those relationships have continued till today, and they are helping us really do the kind of work we do today. So I think there's a lot that science festival can do, is really energize and catalyze an ecosystem and build new relationships that you would otherwise not be able to. So
Yeah, building the network and relationship is a very, very important part of the festival. In fact, somebody was asking me very recently, how did you meet all of these amazing people? And I just said, believe it or not, they were all present at the same place at India Science
yeah,
Festival.
Yeah,
That's how
yeah,
I know them. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
yeah.
Also, as you said, that science festivals are not necessarily native to us, to our country. It's not rooted in our
Mhm,
culture. So I have
mhm,
two questions. How has the process of making a platform that is intrinsic to our people, and
mhm.
B, the acceptance by our people been?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, completely agree with you that science festivals are definitely a new thing for India, and but I think we're inherently a culture that enjoys celebrations. We like festivities, we like community events, and so why not just add some science to that? Those celebrations, and that community building, and and I think that's how I see a science festival in India, is that we are inherently a culture that likes to come together, that likes to discuss and learn, and so why not do that in a setting that allows you to do it in a fun and interesting way. And I think that we are a science hungry nation, and this is also something that the author Angela Seni has said when she wrote the book The Geek Nation, which is around the evolution of Indian science. That we are a nation that likes to seek knowledge. We like to we have so many geeks in our country. Look at the number of kids giving IIT and medical exams, and we really respect science. We really understand that science can help us move ahead in life. So it's not something that I think that our country or our culture doesn't understand. Of course, I mean, that we can also talk about people misusing science to support their arguments, which are very pseudo scientific arguments. But I feel largely we are a geek nation. We are, and geek is really a combination of intelligence and passion. So, and it's celebrated in our culture. We celebrate geeks in our culture, and like perhaps in the US. And so I think we have deprived the Indian public of science festivals for a very long time. And of course, the government organizes an India International Science Festival, but I don't think that one or two science festivals are good enough to address this need and this hunger that people in our country would have for science. And so I think we need to just be careful about making our platform as culturally rooted as possible. It needs to really, it should not alienate the people it is being designed for or it is meant for. And I think that's where we need to pay very, very close attention to. While, like, you earlier mentioned, there are a lot of very good things we could borrow from other parts of the world, but they need to make sense in our country. And so I think that sense making needs to happen when we are designing such events. And I think and I see, and maybe I might not be entirely correct here, but I think the fault also lies in how we think about or design or promote a science festival, and not so much around people's apparent disinterest in them or in science. So I think if you do it well, people, not just not just geeks, are going to flock to it. I mean, who doesn't like to have a good time with a little bit of learning thrown in? And I think Jaipur Literature Festival is a very good example of that. I mean, it's become huge today, and I think it's the way they've built it, over the years, and by paying attention to what works in our country, and what will really bring people to their festival. So while of course I'm sure JLF has a lot of flaws, and I'm not going to go into that, but I also think they've done a lot of very they've made a lot of very good decisions, and they've done a lot of things very well. And we could perhaps learn from those sort of festivals that are already happening, even the Kochi Biennale that happens in the art space. So there's a lot of, we don't have to look to the West at all, or to other countries. We can look at many of these festivals are happening in other sectors. I think there'll be a lot of learning from those.
Totally. And because I was there, I know the fact that there were so many people, there was a diversity of audiences that came in, not necessarily
Yeah.
science geeks, as you said. There were children, there were the parents of children who might not be interested, but they came for their kids, and they ended up being excited themselves. So I think that's the power of a festival setting.
Yeah,
I really believe that it
absolutely. I mean, the
really
key is to get them in. I think the key lies in how you get them in, and the rest follows. I mean, if you've designed a good festival, people will stay, they will engage. But how do you get them there is where I think the challenge lies, and I think that's what we need to crack. We still need to crack that even at ISF.
So, is there anything? I mean, there's a lot to look forward to, but both from Fast India and ISF, what should
Yep.
we be looking forward to right now?
Huh. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that's happening at Fast India, as you might have also seen and heard. I think Fast India is also in a slightly exploratory phase at the moment. We're studying the problems. We're trying to pay attention to what the community needs. So, while, there is a science book fellowship that you may have heard about,
Yes.
which is really meant to promote more popular science books in the country, and also, really bring stories of Indian science and scientists out there. So I think the Science Book Fellowship is a very promising endeavor that we launched earlier this year, and we've got excellent response for that.
A massive
We're
response, if I'm not wrong.
A massive,
yeah,
a massive response, and we're really excited about the book proposals that finally get funded through this program, and finally get published in the next 1 year or two. We've also created something called the SciComm Think Labs. I think I briefly alluded to them earlier in this conversation. SciComm Think Labs are being created as these community-led groups that are going to look at the gaps in the science communication ecosystem in our country. And these are the SciComm Think Labs are made up of people like you and me, science communicators who've been in the field for a while in the country, who understand the ground realities, who understand that, what's going to work, what isn't going to work. But at the same time, they want to also be ambitious and aspirational for science communication. So we've got this group together to think about, various roadmaps on building the science communication ecosystem. So that's another very exciting experiment we're working on, and let's see. I mean, and it's a community led program that FAST is enabling and supporting at this point. So that's another, I think it's exciting stuff from FAST. And in addition to that, we are also looking into developing a public understanding and perception survey. It's going to be a national study that we will be rolling out soon to understand scientific understanding of various demographics. We're not really looking at, we're not going to club public together. We are going to look at young people. We are going to look at older adults, and really understand, where the gaps lie and how can science communication address some of those gaps in public's understanding of science. And so I'm also very excited about, that study that hopefully we'll be launching soon. And and we have the India Science Festival, where there are a lot of different things happening this year. And we already have 3 competitions that I think we that are running. Talk Your Thesis, science fiction writing, and science photography, and all 3 of them are getting very good response, and we have some very exciting plans for them. In fact, for the science fiction writing competition, we recently announced also that the top 20 stories are going to make it to the moons, because one of the
that is very cool.
which I think is so exciting, and I think it's just so fitting for a science fiction writing competition, just so symbolic in many ways of really kind of aiming for the moon. And that's also what science fiction tries to do, is like push your imagination and really like help you imagine futures, or even possibilities and realities that maybe we are not thinking about right now. So I thought it was really quite fitting for for that aspect to for that component to get added this year. And so I mean, we will. I think if those who are interested in Science Festival and what we're doing in the run up to the Science Festival, they should just follow the social media handles of India Science Festival, and they can stay in touch and stay updated on what's to come. And everybody's welcome to attend the festival. It's open and free to all.
I mean, I am coming. I don't know about anyone else, but I'll definitely come.
Yeah, we need to see you there
Yes, yes,
in
for
action.
sure.
Yeah.
So, would you also like to tell us about the 3 day residential course that you have
Oh,
constructed?
that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that as well. Um, there are too many things right now happening, and
Yeah,
a lot of these things that
definitely.
I would say are in their incubation stage, right? I mean, so we are also really testing out a lot of different interventions and programs, and trying to see which ones will work and which ones won't work. And so, yes, so the science communication course that we are developing for the Capacity Building Commission of the Government of India is actually a very exciting opportunity to institutionalize science communication. I think the biggest problem today we have with science communication, it has not been embedded or institutionalized, and that's also why it has that identity crisis, and it has this I would say crisis of, or an existential crisis, is because it's not been institutionalized. So through these courses, we are hoping for scientists and also science communicators at government institutions to take these online courses. And following these online courses, there will also be on ground, in person courses that we'll be organizing, which will build on the understanding of the online course and expand on the understanding of the online course in science communication. So we launched an L0 course on Capacity Building Commission's website called iGot. And iGot is a website that is open to bureaucrats, anyone working in the government system, basically, to take up courses in any sector, so across all sectors. And in the science and technology vertical, they're developing a variety of courses, one of which is science communication, and FAST is helping them build that. So we had launched a very like a short introductory module on their iGot platform last year, following which we organized an in-person 3 day workshop in Hyderabad, for about 30 scientists from across the country working at ISRO, DAE labs, DST labs, ICMR. So, the entire range of departments and ministries as well, in science and technology. And it was a very exciting, I think, event. We touched upon science writing. We touched upon even interviewing. How do you give media interviews? So we had a practical session where scientists, sat in the hot seat and they faced a camera, and then we replayed their interviews and discussed what could have been done better. And so it was a very exciting moment in the workshop for the scientists to really kind of get to experience facing the camera and getting interviewed by media. So yeah, so the workshop, the 3 day workshop, had a lot of hands-on elements. We also got them to write a science story. We also took them through social media and visual tools that they can use in their research. So a very well-rounded workshop, but of course 3 days is never enough, and it was really a way to get them interested and excited about how they can use some of these communication tools in their work when they go back. And so following this in-person workshop, we started working on a slightly advanced level of the science communication course for the iGot workshop. And we're about to complete it. I think we're going to launch it next month. So yeah, so that's really what's happening on the science communication courses front. And I think there has been plenty of learning. We'll also be getting a lot of feedback from the participants so that we can, refine the course and make it more in tune with the needs and needs of the scientific community and the scientists in the government labs. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely very exciting that these seeds are being sown of institutionalizing science communication, and I'm very new to this area, but I already do see the need. So this is amazing. I'm also gonna slide in this question about
Sure.
what are your thoughts on NEP and National Research Foundation bill? Of course, I don't expect you to go into the depths of it, but maybe
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
what changes do you think we can expect in the near future with these coming up?
So I mean, I feel there's no doubt that both these policies, and bill are, very progressive. I think they are in line with the global trends and aspirations for advancing education and scientific research and innovation in our country. There's absolutely no doubt in that intention that both these bills carry, and a bill and policy carry. But I think I'm more interested in seeing how they will translate on the ground and how well they are implemented. Because as they say, after all, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So you could have a, wonderful wish list of things, but, how do we really translate them on the ground within the existing realities that we are dealing with and the challenges we're dealing with. I don't think I've ever been involved in such big program implementations. I'm really keenly following that. I'm also really looking forward to contributing to both these initiatives in whatever way I can in the times to come. But I think they're both very, very exciting, and they are very forward looking. So I think we desperately needed a more, especially NRF, National Research Foundation, I think is really breaking the silos, and I think NEP2 is trying to break the silos that exist in between disciplines, between sectors, and that's really the way forward. If you want to solve the challenges that the world is facing or India is facing, I think we need to break those boundaries, artificial boundaries. We need to talk across sectors. We need to engage across these sectors, and I think both these bills, both these new kind of programs are alluding to that need, are really spotlighting that need to become more interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, and more flexible in the way we look at education and research. So yeah, I'm very excited personally, but I want to see how they get implemented.
Yeah, so I think there's a detailed conversation that Fast India recently conducted on the National Research Foundation bill. Is it still available on YouTube?
Yes, it's available on YouTube. Fast had organized, a discussion to talk about what NRF should be and shouldn't be, because it's still, we still have it on paper. Nothing has started happening. So we thought that maybe through this discussion, we could put together some sort of a roadmap on how this can be done. And what are some of the things we should absolutely avoid, and what are some of the things we should absolutely not avoid in developing the implementation plan for NRF. So yeah, so the conversation should be on India Science Festival's YouTube channel, and and you can hear it there.
Yeah. So towards the end of this conversation, and I want to ask you a question. So this is in 3 parts. And this is how I'd like you to answer it as well. One thing is, what are some long-term changes that you'd like to see in science communication scenario in India? And the second part of it, if you were to lay the next 5 years or so for India in terms of popularization and engagement, A, what would be ideal? And B, what is possible given the constraints? So the long-term changes that we can expect in the Indian scenario, what is ideal and what is possible?
Right. So, I live in an ideal world. So I feel that everything is possible. I don't go by.
I love that.
I don't like to limit our thinking because we feel something is not possible. There were so many, and we have enough examples to show us that we don't need to be limited by those. When the challenges that we think are challenges today, those might not be there tomorrow. So we should not get bogged down by that. I think we should have an aspirational list of things we want to see, or our aspirations of how we want to see science communication. But anyway, so coming back to your question on what are some changes that I would like to see in science communication, I think I would like science communication to become a field that is recognized independently of, I would say, even science, right? Or research. I think it should not just be seen as ancillary to science or research, but really as a field that it stands on its own, and that kind of pushes how science should be done, how science should be solving problems for our country, for the world. And I really want the definition and scope of science communication to expand, if you ask me. I mean, how that should be expanded is something we should discuss and deliberate upon. But I think the current scope of science communication is very limiting. I think it's very nearsighted. So I would really like it to expand its scope. I would really like to see it become its own thing, its own field of research, its own field of practice, and its own field of, of building, the country and building our nation. So, and really contribute meaningfully to nation building. And if I have to see, where science popularization or science engagement in India will be in the next 5 years, I really hope that we can. I really hope that we can push the envelope, we can push the boundaries of what we are doing today. I really wish that we could collaborate across, disciplines and sectors. I wish we see a lot more YouTube channels in science in India. We see a lot of podcasts on science in India. And another thing I was thinking about the other day is that why are we branding it as science communication? I mean, it could just be a podcast that where we kind of talk about science and economics and policy and arts and literature. It doesn't, let's not bound it within the boundaries of science communication.
Absolutely.
I think that's what I want to see happening, that even if we are, even if you want to make science more accessible, maybe there is a way of doing it where we can collaborate with, cultural actors, we can collaborate with people in literature and arts and politics and another field, business. So that's really where I think I would like to see science communication formats diversifying over the next 5 years. I think more evidence-based science communication or communication and engagement to happen in the next 5 years. I think every institution in the country, every research performing institution, every scientific organization in India to have a dedicated science communication team is what I would like to see, and I would like to see a lot more funding coming, our way in the next 5 years. So I think that's really what I see broadly happening, and I think all of this will have to be tied in together, and all of it is going to feed into each other. It's going to influence how different aspects of science communication play out over the next couple of years. And I think that's why the SciComm Think Labs for me are very exciting, because I think we should all use this platform to push for what we want to see, what we want to see happening, push for making a stronger, more evidence-based case for why science needs to be in public's imagination, in policy imagination in our country. And that science needs to collaborate across sectors. I think that those are some of the things that I really want us to focus on, and get out of that whole idea of taking science to the kids. Obviously, kids will listen to you if you take science to them. I mean, the kids will find science exciting, but I think we need to now start thinking beyond that. That is going to happen. That will continue to happen. We are going to continue getting better and better at exciting young people to think about science in beyond like a career in science, but really getting them excited about science and helping them use science in whichever field they enter in. So even our engagement with young people needs to change, and the way we are taking science to them in a very monochromatic way needs to change. It needs to become more colorful. It needs to become more diverse and holistic. So so I think we need to revisit our science communication practices, why we're doing what we're doing in the first place, and also be open to being challenged. I think a lot of us are very scared of being challenged. Whether we I think we'll have an absolute crisis if somebody says that you guys are doing rubbish, or you're not good, or what you're doing is not making any difference. But I want us to build that sort of confidence and that sort of body of work that that can stand against these sort of criticism and these sort of challenges, and that can also help us get better and better in what we're trying to do. So Yeah, I'm rambling now, but I think you get the get the drift.
No, this was amazing. Awesome. I had so much fun. Oh my God. I really needed this.
But I mean, I want to ask you. I
Yeah.
mean, I know it's an interview with me, but I want to ask you, how do you see, what do you want science communication, the field of science communication, to look like in the next 5 years or in the times to come? I mean, as a young person entering science communication.
That's very interesting. I think I am too new to too new in this field to be able to answer that, because like until a few months ago, my idea of science communication was very utopic. Like
Mm-hmm.
and because I have a special interest in theater arts, filmmaking,
Yeah,
and I see science
yeah.
everywhere. I think more science films should be made. There should be focus groups who are talking about these films that are being made. And
Mm.
I see science in our daily conversations, more intellectual conversations. So all of this was kind of utopic, but as you said, anything is possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to dream big. Otherwise, I don't think we'll be
True.
able to get there. And you're absolutely right. I think we need to have more content on science
Yeah,
in any format, and that it needs to enter our day-to-day conversations. I mean, I guess our day-to-day conversations should be informed by evidence and scientific evidence. And I think we
exactly.
should also challenge science. If there are gaps in science, we should, as science communicators, we should also talk about that.
I'm so
Why?
glad you said this. I'm so glad. We would have totally missed this point in the conversation, but I'm
Yeah.
glad that you
Yeah.
picked this up. Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, we are doing. I think the role of a science communicator is that of a PR agent for science.
Mhm.
But I think that's when I said there our scope for science communication needs to expand. Is that I think our scope for what science communication and public engagement can do for science and society needs to expand. And I think we need to figure that out and come up with what should those objectives look like.
Yeah, the good thing for me and my peers in Psychom right now is that your batch sort of has taken all the bullets and you are paving the way for a healthier environment, which is more open to newer ideas. And so that is wonderful for us. I think there's a lot that we can now do with all of these initiatives coming up.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think we are constantly standing on the giants, what do you
Yeah,
call it, the shoulders of giants,
true,
and I think all of us are doing that. And I think that's just the way the world works, right?
true.
But we all have to do our bit. I strongly feel that if we have, even if we come from even a little bit of privilege, we should really do our bit. We should really try to make a difference and do a lot of things that are probably selfless, that have no, where you don't get any returns, but you're doing it because you should be doing it. So I think science communicators today, I also feel, need to be a little selfless if we really
Yeah,
want the field to grow and flourish. It's just I think, is the only way to move things forward.
agreed. Thank you so much for saying that. I'm really glad you brought that up.
I should also say that we should
Gone.
not get exploited by the system. Don't get exploited by the system. But I
Yeah.
think wherever possible, wherever it's possible, for you to be selfless, please be, please be kind.
Yeah.
Please be selfless. I think we need that.
Maybe both
to,
selfless and aware of our surroundings, where we are exactly, and
yeah,
just draw the
exactly.
line between exploitation and selflessness.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. No, no, that's spot on, spot on. Yep. Is there any questions I can ask you
I mean,
in
if
this?
you want to, if you want to, I'm not sure if I'll have any answers, but
No, I mean, I guess my questions would really be, around what where do you see, why do you do what you do today? Purple science or other things, like why do this? So what drives you?
so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna end this conversation on this question
Yeah,
because I feel, and
yeah.
I'm gonna keep this on record, by the way. And
Sure, sure.
at the next episode will be about this completely. Because
Sounds good. Yeah,
there's a lot that I would like to say of that.
sure, sure.
And I feel
Yeah.
that because I've met a lot of amazing people like you, and the way my journey is shaped, I
Hmm.
feel that I mean I maybe I should tell this story for sure.
Yeah, yeah, you should.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. Actually, I never thought about it.
Love to hear.
Yeah,
Looking forward to your next podcast. Yeah, plug it in.
yeah.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned for what the founder of Purple Science wants
Oh
to
God.
origin story.
And that's it for today's episode. As I said, this was one of my favorite episodes because I learned so much. I got so much from this conversation. I hope you did too. If you have any questions regarding the episode or about Sarah's journey, you can always write to us on our social media platforms. And don't forget to register yourself for the India Science Festival, which is happening on the 20th and 21st of January at IISER Pune. For more details, you can check out the official website of India Science Festival or their social media handles, which are also in the description. I will see you in the next episode. Till then, keep listening, keep learning. Thanks for tuning in to the Purple Science Podcast. We share stories every Tuesday. Our inbox is always open for your feedback, and our DMs across all social media platforms linked in the description are open to your unique stories. If you know somebody who might benefit from this, do share the podcast with them and spread the joy of learning.